Hey everyone, today on the show, I'm honored to welcome Colonel Trent D. Upton, Chief of Staff for U.S. Army Public Affairs, a strategic advisor to multiple general officers, and a former brigade commander with multiple combat deployments. In addition to his extensive combat experience, Trent has been at the forefront of organizational transformation, development, and strategic communications for the Army across the span of his 29-year career. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Danny. Hey, thanks for having me on here, and really excited to have a great conversation with you about the Army, about a career service, and about what I love about leadership.
Absolutely. Well, first I'll let you expand a little bit more about your background to get a better idea who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Trent Upton. I'm an American soldier, trained, fit, and disciplined. And my why I've served this country for 29 years and counting, is you, your families, our country, and our way of life. I joined the Army for purpose, specifically to do the mission of the infantry, close with and destroy the enemy of our country. I stayed for the people, and I'm still doing it for both. I love what I do. If they let me do this another 30 years, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Originally a farm boy from southeastern Ohio, proud graduate of the Ohio State University, go Buckeyes, and just really honored and happy to have the privilege to talk to you about the Army and thoughts on leadership, which I would expand on your intro as well to say that I'm coming at this from a perspective of a bit of a atypical career for an Army officer, in that I spent the majority of my time out in operational units and out in combat operations and just leading and training soldiers and formations. And so that really informs a lot about the perspective that I have to share today, which I think is a little distinctive from some of the other esteemed guests on there that you've had on the program. But great respect for everyone else that's come on and shared their views as well, and look forward to sharing mine.
Absolutely. Well, let's start then with leadership under pressure. Could you tell a little bit more about your philosophy on leadership, especially in high stakes and uncertain environments, and how it evolved over your career?
Yeah, certainly. So before we get into that, I think it may be of more value to just talk about my perspective on leadership philosophies and vision in general, because I think that is of value to everyone out there, more so than any war story I could tell. So my philosophy on leadership philosophies, which I coach and mentor junior officers on these days, is this. It gets down to who you are as a leader, what you do and say every day, what values and priorities are important to you. I would argue that's the basis of any leadership philosophy or vision, because at the end of the day, in my opinion, the most important thing of a leadership philosophy or a organizational vision is it's got to be authentic. It's got to be real. And that starts and begins with the leader in charge. That having been said, my own personal leader philosophy could just be summed up, because I'm a guy who just thinks that leadership is simple. It's not easy. And the best leaders take the complex and simplify it for everybody to understand. It all comes down to leadership by example. Anything that you want from a organization or other people, you've got to demonstrate as a leader. It's a two-way street. So if you want communication, you must communicate. If you want dignity and respect, you must demonstrate that, and so forth and so on. That's my lead in here in terms of my thoughts on a leadership philosophy. Specific to my own, of course, it's changed over time. It's grown, it's evolved as I've gained more experience, benefited from multiple great leaders mentoring me over the years to help eventually make my own leadership philosophy. Where I'm at now is different than where I was even a few years ago as a brigade combat team commander. And I'll expand on that. As a brigade combat team commander or battalion commander before that, at the end of the day, it comes down to winning in the right way, legally, ethically, without excuse. Because the responsibilities that we have as Army leaders to fight and win our nation's wars, to be responsible for America's sons and daughters, it all comes down to being able to fight and win on the battlefield the right way without any excuses. To me, the other side of that, of the thanks for your service, which is always appreciated. But to me, the other part of that is, hey, you better win, because we know that that's what the American people and that's what our country expects of us, and we take that very seriously. Now, where I am now, I've evolved that to not just leadership philosophy for the purposes of my current profession, but even just a life philosophy, if you will. And to me, it comes down to a couple tenets of that. First, leadership to me is all about people, connection, and impact. Expanding on that, the way I visualize that, those elements that support that, number one, it's creating value or adding value to other people and organizations, because it's not about me, it's about other people in the organization. Two is acceptance, which might sound a little strange, right? I'm in the military. I'm a decision maker. I'm charged to make judgment calls. But to me, acceptance is the essence of connection, and accepting people where they are in their careers, where they are as people, and then really getting that fingertip feel and understanding of your people, so that you have that baseline from which to help them grow and maximize their potentials as a person and in their specific profession and position of choice. The next piece of this gets down to win-win through action. To me, that speaks to team play and also relationships, right? One of the things I have definitely learned through the course of the career, and that I coach and mentor junior officers on now, is that conceptually, regardless of the size of the organization in the Army, and as you know, we operate at scale on a daily basis. The things that I have observed change the most as you move up through the ranks. It gets into the importance of personalities and relationships and teamwork, and being able to really work within those as they all become bigger and more important in the day-to-day to be successful. The last piece of that is fighting hurt, because the situation will never be perfect. You will never feel completely prepared for what you're about to do, but you do your best and you lean forward, give it the shot. And if you fail forward, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, learn the lesson, and get better. And then really the overarching piece of this that I say for last is I believe in playing big. And what I mean by that is life's too short to play small, right? So take the shot, take the risk within reason. I'm not talking about being reckless, but prudent risk to identify and seize opportunities and use those for a positive outcome.
Yeah, I can totally resonate with especially with the last piece that you shared about taking risks while not being reckless, but still being proactive and playing big. And also appreciate your different perspectives on leadership. For the next topic, I want to explore any war stories or key deployments that shaped you as a leader or changed your perspective. Could you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I really thought about this a little bit, and I would sum up the sum total of my lessons learned from 6 combat deployments as this. Sometimes you need to be the leader they need you to be, as opposed to what you would prefer to be. And what I mean by that is there are situations in combat, clearly, but high stakes situations where they may need you to be the kind of that fiery, bold, take the hill kind of guy. but there's also areas where a softer approach, dare I say, a more personal approach is warranted. And I think that's part of the art of leadership. And one of the things that I enjoy about being a leader so much is you have to look at the situation, understand your people, understand the environment that you're in, and then adjust to provide the right leadership approach at the right time for a positive effect. So, and the majority of that actually is being a calming force, which might run, counter to what some people think with some of the misconceptions out there. But people under stress, the firm, strong, resolute, yet calm leader is what they look for. And we spend a lot of time with our training development and leader development strategies to develop that competence that gives the confidence to the leader, and also gets them the experience in so that they can be smooth, they can be calm, because that, more than anything else, from what I found in crisis situations, is what organizations and people look towards. And I'm happy to expand on that in terms of my own thoughts on how to prepare for that type of stuff.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so and I'm coming from the background that, as a mentor of mine said, "Hey, the Army is going to tell you what you're good at if you listen to it and pay attention," and he was exactly right. So throughout my career, I've continuously found myself in situations where I've been called upon to step into a very chaotic situation and take charge of it and lead an organization through crisis situations. So how do you prepare for that? It's exactly that. It's preparation. In my view, preparation trumps adaptation any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So preparation is 90% of it. And it's not just preparation of the organization, not just the preparation of soldiers and leaders. It's also the individual leader preparation. I'm a huge proponent for self-development. That is part of the Army's leadership development doctrine. Self-development, or operational experience in a unit, and then the institutional side of that, which consists of a consistent, progressive leader development pipeline through schooling throughout the course of a officer, non-commissioned officer, or warrant officer's career. I've yet to see any place else that does it as well as we do, admitting my bias, but it's very progressive and it builds that capability. And then specific to the preparation piece in my own experience, most of this I learned actually before I joined the military, from growing up on the farm with, learning accountability and responsibility early on. But then also I give credit to my mom for getting me a World Books encyclopedia set back in the day. That was pre-internet. So I read that whole thing, and then I was exposed to a lot of things that at a young age, specifically philosophy, history, theory of war, that I didn't even know at the time, but that was preparing me for what I would later do. That, combined with my background in sports as a teenager, I got into sports psychology at a young age, and I started using various mindfulness techniques before it was cool, really from the standpoint of getting ready for football or lifting weights. And so I learned visualization. I learned how to relax, how to shed stress, how to focus. And so as I personally prepare for a combat operation, just use that as an example, once everything's done in the planning and preparation phase, especially when you're a commander, there's always that period, kind of that calm before the storm, so to speak, before the operation commences. And I use that time to focus, to prepare. to run through that operation in intricate detail in my mind. And I run through in my head multiple iterations, thinking about all the various contingencies that could possibly happen. And so while you'll never account for every contingency that might occur in a chaotic environment like that, I had already at least had a baseline understanding of what could happen, how we could mitigate risk, what decisions I would potentially need to make to keep us on track to be able to accomplish the mission and mitigate risks to the force. So a little bit of that. Again, I call it my combat zen.
Hmm. And these techniques with preparation is how you deal with uncertainty in the combat environment. And would you say that this also translates into civilian world?
Yeah, 100%. You know, especially in the most recent years, I spent a lot of time thinking through how do I extend, evolve everything that I've been so grateful that the Army has taught me and helped magnify in myself, to include what my mentors have coached and mentored me on. How can I take that and expand to other parts of life? And for me, I'm a conceptual thinker. So whether it's whether we're talking about combat, we're talking about life, it's all the same to me. And so I really spend a lot of time thinking through how that can be applied, and I apply it every day.
Yeah, we'll circle back to the parallels between military and the civilian world. But before that, I want to talk a little more about your journey into mastering Army public affairs. And as you previously mentioned, offline, you didn't have a super formal background in this field, but you still thrived in it. And curious to learn what it taught you about communication, learning, influence, this journey.
Yeah. So first, I, I I got a little spidey sense going on when you said mastery. So I will admit I have some expertise in some areas. I get a little uncomfortable and not one to claim that I'm a master or expert of anything. Uh, that's maybe one of my personal hangups, because I just of the opinion that once you go, declaring yourself an expert or a master, you might close yourself off to learning more. And so I appreciate the kind words, but I'm not going to say I'm a master. I know a few things. But yeah, I mean, coming into Army Public Affairs is really my last assignment in the Army. That was a deliberate decision by my part, as you alluded to, for a couple different reasons. Number one, as I looked around and I looked at, okay, I've accomplished all these things in my career, or really I benefited from the entire team helping me accomplish these things, because I would give credit to everybody I served with for anything that could be construed as success here personally. But as I looked at that, I said, let me do something that is completely different than what I am used to. Let me get out of my comfort zone so I can learn and grow, develop new skills that might then be of additional value to others and organizations moving forward. So that, plus my opinion that communication is the hardest part of leadership. If you think through it, if you don't understand what I'm asking you to do, or I don't understand what type of feedback you're telling me, everybody's gonna get frustrated, right? So, plus I've always been admiring of folks who are really good communicators, probably because I had a speech impediment when I was a kid growing up and had to really work through that at a young age. But I've always really focused in on how can I communicate better. So that all led me toward my current position at Army Public Affairs. But then I came in, willing to learn and really keeping my mouth shut and ears open so I could do that, and then take time to look to see where could I be value added to the team while learning a whole lot of things that I did not know. So it's been a great learning experience for me. Uh, I will I'll defer to the organization to in terms of how much value added I've been, but I've been doing my best, and it's been a great, just overall great decision, and I'm really happy that I made it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, getting out of the comfort zone and trying things that you are, you don't have, you aren't the best at is the greatest learning opportunity and an opportunity for growth. It's almost like this book by Ryan Holiday, which is my favorite book, is "Obstacle is the Way." It's the Stoicism philosophy, but I totally resonate with that. And uh, as far as I understand, you have a similar approach.
But yeah, 100%, and yeah, similar affinity for Stoicism and other philosophies on that. Yeah, look, you got to take the shot. You got to put yourself out there. In a one of the things I think that I benefited from my experience was just that being comfortable, being uncomfortable, being comfortable in chaos, and then also being willing to you know put myself in situations where I'm going to have those learning opportunities. Like I like to surround myself with people that are where I would like to be, and then learn from them. I mean, you can't help but get better if you surround yourself with the right people at the right level, doing things that you would like to do better.
Yeah, and on a personal note, I totally agree with this idea of surrounding yourself with the people you wanna become more like. I even, I thought this through a few weeks ago as well. Who are five people who I spend the most time with, and I actually thought, and also um, I was trying to make sure that these people come from different backgrounds and help me balance help kind of balance each other out, because you don't want to develop an ego, which is another problem. As you mentioned, this is where the growth stops when you were talking about mastery. So, do you want to talk a little bit more about this, maybe ego, and how to prevent that from hindering your development?
Yeah, I'd love to. So as you mentioned, you know, ego's the enemy, or one of my sayings is, "Don't let your ego get in the way of getting better." And so I think that that's got to be for me. I recommend a conscious approach to really keeping yourself in check. You know, because the tendency tends to be right. Generally speaking, the higher folks go, sometimes they can you can lose touch or not be grounded. So I actually do a couple of different things personally that I found that were effective throughout my career. Just to stay grounded. Number one, it gets into why did you start this to begin with? And that's a question I like to ask junior officers, like, why did you join the Army? Why'd you stay? I mentioned some of mine at the beginning, but I always did my best to stay true to myself in terms of the real focus that I had was mission, soldier, and family, right? And to stay grounded in that, number one. Um, Number two, I would use it. I use a technique where I would put reminders up on my whiteboard. So, and those changed over time, but it was all to keep me centered and focused and grounded on what I was doing and why I was doing it. And really, starts off with things like your why is them. Your leading doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with mission, soldiers, and families, as an example. Um, to lead with love, as an example. By the way, I could expand on this, but in my opinion, everybody talks about discipline all the time. Let me tell you what the ultimate discipline is. The ultimate discipline is the discipline of love. Because at the end of the day, when you are preparing human beings to go into bad situations, the end result is you're trying to build that teamwork. Another way I like to put it is you, you you're trying to build that love between two soldiers, that willingness and trust to sacrifice for each other if need be. So it's a little tangential. Sorry about that. But yeah, so, some notes to myself I still use to keep myself grounded. Those ones I mentioned earlier, create value, acceptance. I mean, those are on my refrigerator. I look at those every day to stay grounded. And then beyond that, I've got some other grounding artifacts. So I like unit baseball caps. So I have mine from I was a lieutenant when I first started out in the Army, and I like to wear that on occasion when I go to the gym, just to remind myself, hey, this is where you started. The other thing it does too is, uh, on paper, I'm not even supposed to be here, right? I didn't fit all of the kind of stereotypical things that an infantry officer, um, is thought to have. And I'm realistic. When I was a junior officer, you put me in a lineup with 20 of my peers, and you ask somebody, hey, who's going to go on and be a colonel and command a brigade combat team and all these things? I'm not so sure a lot of people would have picked me. I'll be honest. So that helps me remind myself of, hey, remember where you started. Remember that, oh, by the way, failed to mention it earlier. My initial goal in the Army was, hey, I want to be an infantry platoon leader. I thought that would be pretty cool. So in a sense, you could say I've been self-actualizing for about 25 years. Okay. Plus. So, there you go. So that's just some things in terms of examples to help you keep you grounded. And then there's other little idiosyncrasies I have. Like I don't like, and it's not that I don't like, I get uncomfortable if someone junior to me opens up a door for me. I always thank them, but also make sure they understand I'm not that special. So, I mean, it's little things like that if you don't keep track of those, in my opinion, can build up, and all of a sudden, you've got some ego going on that can be problematic.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that, because this is something that I also personally try to work on and explore. So this is definitely helpful. You mentioned playing big and taking a shot a few times, and I'd like to learn about your perspective on that. But to give you some of my thoughts, to me, um, like in my life, I try to think what I really want first, and I always try to explore and to figure out what I actually want in life or in a specific area of life. And then, based on that, when I feel an alignment, I then take a shot and put my 100% into it. What's your take on playing big and taking a shot?
So first, I look at it very similar to you. Uh, the only thing that I would add too is realize that it might not work out, and then you just go to something else, right? And be comfortable and organize yourself personally, professionally, to be able to manage any risk you're assuming, right? So make sure that you've got your life organized to personally and professionally be able to take that shot. But very similar of it's interesting as I look through and looked at my future. I've never really been a plan B kind of guy. I know everybody says you're supposed to have a plan B. I'm not a plan B kind of guy. I've always been a plan A until plan A doesn't work anymore, and then jump to another plan A. So maybe I probably have some work to do on the self-development side on that portion, Danny, but it just never resonated with me. But again, I was very fortunate that even though I drifted a little bit in college, um, trying to sort out what I wanted to do, I locked on to the Army, to the profession early on, and then that was it. There was no plan B. It was just all in. Okay, so Uh, yeah. So, and then I think in terms of playing big beyond that, it's just again, how do you organize your life to be able to take that risk, and it's going to be okay. You got to bet on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of things that I also think about. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit more about the parallels between military and business. So you've learned a bunch of different lessons, and as you said, you've been thinking and exploring how they can apply to other areas of life, whether it's business leadership, organizational transformation, business environments. What is your perspective on these parallels?
Well, first, my perspective is I'm realistic. I have more to learn. Okay, but I'll share from what I've surmised thus far. You know, from doing my own research and then really reaching out and having conversations with folks in other walks of life. So business owners, CEOs, other executives to get an understanding of various industries, various parts of the private sector, as an example, and other areas. But you know, when I speak with them, some of the things that resonate is a, obviously there's the leadership component of it, right? Um, and 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 all the things we talked about earlier in terms of business strategy, um, organizational transformation, alignment of an organization to a strategy. But I think there's a whole lot more that folks don't really think about. So as I look as an example, and again, I'm a mental model guy, so it speaks to me. But as I look at you know our doctrinal phases to conduct an offensive operation, as an example, and you look at the phases of a you know project management life cycle, as an example, or um, all the differences between marketing, sales, business development, capture, etc. They're virtually the same, just different words. Now there are nuanced differences that are things that need to be in some cases learned or just translated, but they are not that as they are more similar than they are dissimilar. And I think a lot of the discussions seem to be that there's this wide gap, and I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, I'll find out, but I think that there's probably a middle ground in there. That's one thing, and then two, when you look in terms of opportunities to support veteran employment, because if you really want to thank them, in my opinion, that's a huge way. But we're natural change agents. I mean, regardless of rank, if you're a leader in this army, you are trained and developed to be able to move into an organization and make an immediate impact. Not tomorrow, not next month, but immediate. There's an immediacy of the skills, knowledge, attributes that a veteran can apply to any organization. Uh, natural progressions into areas such as logistics, supply chain management. Mentioned project management already. Just a whole wealth of skills, knowledge, attributes that really it gets into being able to translate and explain. So it's not just the baseline. Well, you hire a veteran and they're going to be disciplined and show up to work on time. I mean, that is like this, but I think most people don't realize the other abilities that uh, leaders of various ranks coming out of the military are already used to doing. It's just understanding it and a little bit of bridging the communication gap, which I think is it's two sides of the coin, right? So, but I think there's a lot more opportunity out there. If I'm wrong, I'm happy for folks to reach out to me direct. I'm happy to have the conversations and learn, but that's my sight picture right now.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, veterans, they can be agents of change in businesses, and this can happen regardless of the rank of the veteran, right? It doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there are there are some differences in terms of how much time experience we may have in certain things. So you have more senior officers like me or lieutenant colonels. We've worked in functional equivalent to, depending upon the size of the organization, okay, and the industry. We've worked in areas that could be considered director positions, as an example, vice president positions as an example. Again, depending upon the context. But that's not that's I think it's one of the great things about from talking to folks that are already have retired and moved on to some new opportunity is the rank is not constraining. I mean, I know plenty of former non-commissioned officers, junior officers of mine that are just crushing it as business owners right now or in other senior positions. So that all that can be a little bit deceiving. It gets into just understanding. I really think it just gets into the individual preparation that folks go through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for putting that out there. Um, I remember you, before we started the episode, you mentioned the parallel between what you do and a COO in the business world. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the parallels in roles between the military and the civilian world?
Yeah. So again, I think it depends upon the industry and the size of business that you're talking about, for sure. But I think that there are, as I again have engagements with C-suite executives as well as business owners, and just compare contrast. Hey, these are some of the things that we do at various positions, and the feedback is, oh yeah, this is the operations integration guy. Depending upon what type of company you're looking at, a director position or maybe a COO type of position. Again, depending upon the size of the company. But there's also some nuanced differences that I think that people need to understand. And so I in my current position, I'm running all the business operations for Army Public Affairs. So all of that soup to nuts is what I'm running. Is there, there's some of that's a direct translation. Some of it probably isn't, but I think that my point on that is I think there's a gap in understanding out there, both a lot of times with the veteran community and then with folks in business to understand the full capability that veterans can provide. And I think that's it's a bit of a two-way street. Certainly, both folks need to be able to communicate that, and then on the veteran side, obviously it's preparing yourself and addressing any gaps you may have to be able to fulfill said role you're interested in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Again, appreciate you sharing that. That's definitely something that needs to be communicated for businesses who are hiring vets, that there is much more value than it might seem like in the first place. Um, as the final topic, do you have a message for the listeners that you want to share, or just mention something or expand on something that we haven't covered today?
Yes, a specific to younger folks out there that are out there really trying to sort it out. Okay. Hey, I hear you. I feel you. I know I understand, a lot of the conversations out there in terms and Danny, you alluded to some of it, folks trying to find their purpose, trying to find, the meaning of all this, I would tell you to consider serving in some capacity, service to others, serving something bigger than yourself. If in terms of the benefits of that, an investment in other people is an investment in yourself if you play your cards right. And then also, just find your purpose. Find your purpose, take a shot, work at it. Put down the phone, get in the gym, find something that's meaningful, something that's real, and just give it your all. And if it goes sideways, especially when you're younger, hey, you got time, man. Like, dust yourself off, learn the lesson, and then just work to get better. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So there's all kind of opportunities out there. Now, I'll tell you, if you're looking for a place that has all those things rolled into one, a place to make yourself better, a place to make a difference, a place to improve yourself, whether you're in for a minimum service obligation or 30 years, hey, consider the Army or another branch of service. It's interesting. Somebody a few years ago, somebody asked me, "Hey, you ever do a Spartan race?" I'm like, "Spartan race? You mean Tuesday?" I mean, so if you're looking for some holistic pieces where you're going to be in an organization that values things like loyalty, duty, honor, okay, values-based organization that is going to invest in you if you invest in it. There's other ones out there, but of course, I'll show my bias. I think it's a great opportunity. But even if you don't do that, find some other occupation where you are serving, because I think that ultimately, for me personally, that's what it's all about. You get what you give, and I would encourage anybody to do that. Hit me up. I'm happy to help out.
Well, appreciate your message, Colonel. It was a great conversation with a lot of lessons shared, pieces of advice, stories, a very valuable 40 something minutes that we spent on today. Thank you again.
Hey, thanks, Danny. Really appreciate it.